The smell of mesquite smoke and slow-cooked ribs floated lazily over the cedar fence, mingling with the warm summer air. Kids' laughter echoed from the slip-and-slide I'd set up for the neighborhood's 4th of July cookout. It was supposed to be the kind of day that reminded people of simpler times, neighbors chatting, cold drinks in hand, dogs wagging tails near the grill. But I'd been around long enough to know that in every perfect afternoon, there's always someone itching to ruin it. I just didn't expect it to come in the form of a heavy-set woman in a floral blouse, waddling up my driveway like she owned the block, clutching a clipboard like it was the Constitution. Karener, as she liked to call herself, president of the HOA, though we didn't even have one, had been glaring over the fence since noon. I caught her taking photos of my smoker earlier, mumbling something about illegal fire hazards, while I basted the ribs. She had that look on her face, the one that made it clear she'd been rehearsing her speech all morning in front of a mirror. Sure enough, by 3 o'clock, she was standing in front of my guests, puffed up with self-importance, announcing she'd already reported this unlawful gathering to the authorities. I thought she was bluffing. I really did, until I saw her step aside to reveal the flashing lights of a patrol car pulling into my driveway. The music stopped mid-chorus. A couple of my neighbors looked at me like they weren't sure whether to grab a plate or start running. I wiped my hands on a dish towel, trying to keep my cool, but my blood was starting to simmer hotter than the coals in my grill. Karen crossed her arms with a smug grin, as if she'd just signed my eviction papers herself. The officer stepped out, scanning the scene with that neutral, professional look cops get when they're trying to size up a situation without jumping to conclusions. But when he turned toward me, his eyes softened, and then, just like that, he broke into a grin. "Eli," he said, walking up and giving me a firm handshake. "Didn't expect to see you in trouble on my day off." The color drained from Karen's face, because the man in uniform standing before me wasn't just any officer, was my brother-in-law, Chief Daniel Mercer, the highest-ranking cop in the county and the last person you'd want to have on the wrong side of a petty complaint. Karen stammered, "Oh, officer, I have evidence. This man is violating open-flame ordinances, creating unsafe conditions, disturbing the peace." But Daniel held up a hand, the kind of subtle gesture that says stop before you embarrass yourself any further. He turned to me, eyebrow raised. "Unsafe? I think you've got the safest backyard in the county, Eli. Unless your ribs have suddenly become weapons." Laughter rippled through the crowd, low at first, then louder as people started catching on. Karen's cheeks flushed crimson, but she wasn't done yet. She pulled a crumpled sheet of paper from her clipboard and waved it in Daniel's face. "This is the notice. I hand-delivered it to him last week. No BBQs without HOA approval." Daniel glanced at it, then looked back at me with a smirk. "We don't have an HOA here," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Never have. This is just her little fantasy government." A murmur of agreement came from the neighbors, people nodding, rolling their eyes, some even muttering "finally" under their breath. Apparently, I wasn't the only one she'd been harassing with fake citations and made-up rules. Daniel studied the paper, then tilted it so everyone could see. "This isn't a legal document," he said, his voice calm but firm. "It's printed off a template site. Look, it doesn't even have a proper signature or a city seal. And see here? It's dated for last year." He let the page flutter back toward her clipboard, where it landed with a slap. "Karen, you've been impersonating an HOA official. That's fraud. And filing a false police report on top of it? That's a crime." You could feel the shift in the air like the moment a thunderstorm rolls in and you know the wind's about to change. Karen's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. She tried to backpedal, mumbling something about misunderstandings and just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. But Daniel wasn't having it. He stepped closer, his tone still even but edged with steel. "Safety doesn't come from making up laws to push people around. It comes from respect, community, and knowing your limits." What none of us expected was the twist that came next. From the back of the crowd, a man in his 60s stepped forward, quiet, steady, with the kind of presence that made people instinctively listen. His name was Henry, a Vietnam vet who kept mostly to himself at the end of the street. He held up his phone and pressed play. Suddenly, Karen's voice filled the air, recorded clear as day. "We'll see how he likes it when the cops show up and I tell them he threatened me. Bet he won't have his little barbecue parties after that." Gasps erupted, and Karen's eyes went wide as saucers. That was the moment it all fell apart for her. Daniel's expression darkened. "You plan to fabricate a threat?" he asked, his voice low and dangerous now. Karen took a step back, but Henry's phone was still playing, revealing more her bragging about fake fines she'd slapped on other neighbors, hinting at how she'd pressured a single mom down the street to move out. Every word was a nail in the coffin she'd built for herself. I could see Daniel's mind working, already calculating charges, paperwork, and the public embarrassment she was about to face. My neighbors were no longer just bystanders, they were witnesses. Karen's little empire of intimidation was crumbling in real time, and there was nothing she could do to stop it. Daniel didn't raise his voice, but his words carried the weight of a gavel striking wood. "Karen, you're coming with me. We'll talk downtown about impersonation, harassment, and filing false reports." It was the kind of statement that didn't leave room for argument. Yet Karen tried anyway, flapping her hands as if she could fan away the truth. "You can't arrest me. This is just a misunderstanding. She cut herself off when Daniel held up a handcuff, the metallic click silencing her mid-sentence. The crowd was silent now, every eye fixed on her, and you could practically hear the collective realization ripple through them. This woman had been a bully for years, and today was the day it ended. The neighborhood was small enough that news traveled faster than smoke on a windy day. By the time Daniel escorted her to the patrol car, people had come out of their houses, cell phones in hand, recording every humiliating step. She barked something about lawsuits and, "You'll all regret this." But her voice was drowned out by the sound of kids cheering and someone yelling, "Free the ribs!" The sight of Karen being guided into the back of the cruiser was the kind of poetic justice that made you believe in karma again. While Daniel was busy with the arrest, Henry quietly approached me and handed over a small USB drive. "There's more on here," he said. "Months of her nonsense. Threats, fake notices, intimidation, you name it. Figured if she went after you, it was time to bring it all out." I nodded, feeling that deep mix of gratitude and anger that comes when you realize just how much someone's been getting away with. Henry gave me a half-smile before disappearing back into the crowd, like a soldier who'd done his part and didn't need applause. An hour later, the party was back in full swing. Music playing, kids running, the smell of barbecue reclaiming the air. But the conversation had shifted. Neighbors were swapping their own Karen stories, and some were already talking about organizing a real neighborhood committee, one that was about helping, not harassing. It struck me then that this was bigger than my barbecue. This was about standing up to someone who thought control was the same as leadership. The next morning, local news crews were parked on the corner, microphones ready. Footage of Karen's arrest had gone viral overnight, thanks to a neighbor who uploaded it with the caption, "When you call the cops on a barbecue, but the chief's your target's brother-in-law." It had hundreds of thousands of views, with comments ranging from pure comedy to serious debates about false authority and community rights. Even the mayor's office weighed in, praising the way Daniel handled it and warning against citizen-imposed governance without legal authority. By Friday, Karen was facing real charges: fraud, harassment, filing a false police report, and thanks to Henry's recordings, a possible civil suit from multiple neighbors. The weight of her self-made crown had finally crushed her, and she was left with nothing but the mess she'd made. The house she once used as her throne sat quiet, blinds drawn, a for sale sign leaning crooked in the yard. Weeks later, we held another neighborhood cookout, this time with a giant banner that read "Community Without Control." Daniel came by, off duty, and as we stood by the grill, he said, "You know, Eli, it's not the barbecue that brought people together, it's the fact you didn't back down." I thought about that, about how easy it would have been to cave, to cancel the party, to avoid the fight. But in the end, standing firm had shown everyone that they didn't have to live under the thumb of someone who made up rules to suit themselves. The ribs that day tasted better than any I'd ever made. Not because of the spice rub or the slow cook, but because they were shared in a yard where people felt free, safe, and welcome. That was the real victory, not Karen's arrest, Not the news coverage, but the shift in the way we all looked at one another. We weren't just neighbors anymore. We were allies. So here's my question to you. When someone abuses authority that doesn't exist, is it enough to expose them, or do we have a duty to make sure they can never pull it off again?